A few miles south of the city of Lockport, standing alone on a stretch of mowed field between a country road and the canal beyond, stands this modest marker. The words on the plaque are there for those who don't know the story. For those who do, though, the stone that the plaque is mounted on, which was chiseled from the solid bedrock that lies just under the soil in this entire region, is the better memorial. At 9 a.m. on the 26th day of October, 1825, the Grand Erie Canal was officially opened. In Buffalo, at the foot of Main Street, Governor DeWitt Clinton boarded the packet boat Seneca Chief, which was elegantly outfitted for the trip to New York City. When the Seneca Chief, with the governor aboard, arrived at Pendleton at the intersection of the Tonawanda Creek and the Grand Erie Canal, they were met by a delegation sent to meet them from Lockport on the packet boat William C. Bouck. The flotilla of boats then proceeded from there to Lockport for the celebration. Wedding is one of those words that can be used as either a verb or a noun. When two people are wedding, their friends and family dress up and drive off to attend the ceremony and celebration called the wedding. In October of 1825, when laborers working on the original Erie Canal finally cleared the last shards of rock from the deep cut at Pendleton, the gates were opened, and for the first time ever, water flowed down this gorge from Lake Erie. The waters of the West had in fact been wed to those of the East all the way to the Atlantic Ocean by a continuous navigable stream. But the Wedding of the Waters, as it became known, referred to the 10-day celebration party that New York State threw for itself, and deservedly so, beginning at Buffalo on the morning of Wednesday, October 26, 1825, and continuing until the evening of November 4th in New York City. Almost no one remembers that celebration today. Few even know anything about the reason it was held, even though every one of our lives today has been touched and shaped in some way by this watery ribbon that still winds its way across New York State. In 2005, 180 years to the day from the time that first celebration began, and 20 years before the bicentennial of the completion of the Erie Canal, the city of Lockport has decided that it will remember.
Dear Heavenly Father, Creator of the heavens and the earth, we come today asking your blessings upon this celebration of what your hands have formed and the abilities you have given man to complete. This wonderful project of the passage to the west through the natural divide that you created and man through your wisdom brought to completion. Help us to recognize the wonderful blessings you have bestowed upon this state and this great nation and be thankful. Amen. I'd like to just read a part of a narration from Jesse Hawley in 1807. I entertain vast ideas of the destinies of these United States, a giant in its infancy. To what point may we not aspire in our maturity? Navigation offers the most cheap, familiar, and extensive intercourse with distant places. This, therefore, first deserves attention. Our territory, from one extremity to the other, is either intersected or interlocked with current waters or inland seas. Here is a vast field open to the American enterprise to improve the old beds or to give new channels to the smaller streams, and to convert our lakes into reservoirs for channels. I point out that improvements which I conceive to be of the greatest importance of any which can be undertaken in the United States, a canal from the foot of the Lake Erie into the Mohawk. Why was the parent of nature so thoughtful? Why was he not so kind as to give this country a river navigation from the Atlantic to the lakes, like that which flows to Albany? The Creator has done what we cannot reasonably ask of him. By the Falls of Niagara, he has given a head of the waters of Lake Erie sufficient to flow to the Atlantic. By the channels of the Mohawk and the Hudson, he has only left the finishing stroke to be applied by the hand of man, and it is complete.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Welcome to the celebration of the opening of the Grand Erie Canal. Here, Lockport marks the spot where the waters of Lake Erie and the Atlantic Ocean meet and the last blow is struck. Today, the chain of locks will be tested for the first time. This celebration is in honor of this work and to the people who struggled to tame nature's greatest barriers. We stand here today, the rocks of the mountain ridge crumbled to pieces and swept away, where the waters of Erie now flow. The solemnity at this place on the first arrival of vessels from Lake Erie is intended to indicate and commemorate the navigable communication which has been accomplished between the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean in about 8 years to the extent of more than 425 miles by wisdom, public spirit, and energy of the people of the state of New York. As a bond of the union between the Atlantic and the Western states, the Erie Canal may prevent the dismemberment of the American Empire. As an organ of communication between the Hudson, the Mississippi, the St. Lawrence, the Great Lakes, and their tributary rivers, it will create the greatest inland trade route ever witnessed. May God of heaven and earth smile most propitiously on the work and render it subservient to the best interests of the human race.
8 years ago in 1817, they said it couldn't be done, and today, October 26, 1825, it has been done. Once derided as a folly, Clinton's ditch has been dug. The final spade of dirt has been turned and waters flow across this vast breadth of our state. 4 months ago on June 5, 1825, we stood here in awe with the father of the country's dear friend, General Marquis de Lafayette. He shared with us his excitement for Lockport. In his own words, he said, "This area is blessed with two wonders of the world, the natural wonder at Niagara and the man-made one here." He noted that these wonders were second only to the wonder of freedom. Later that same month of June, the locks were completed, leaving only the digging through solid rock to Pendleton left to finish. On June 24th, the capstone was laid by the Masonic Temple with the following inscription: "Let prosperity be excited to perpetuate our fine institutions and to make still greater efforts than our ancestors to promote public prosperity by the recollection that these works of internal improvements were achieved by the spirit and perseverance of Republican free men." Years from now, will anyone look back and remember this day, the 26th of October, 1825? We cannot say, but this is a memory we here will carry for eternity. Thank you, Mayor.
Fire in the hole! Wave to the kids. Hey, there we go.
What was constructed here in Lockport in the 1820s was called the Flight of Five. 5 locks would be built to ascend the Niagara Escarpment for travel towards Buffalo, and 5 more would be built right next to it to descend the Niagara Escarpment for folks who were headed east and on towards Albany. It's the only place on the Erie Canal where that was attempted, and the only place where a succession of locks was built so that two-way traffic could be accommodated on the Erie Canal. When it was determined that the locks were already too small, basically from the moment they were open, a decision was made to enlarge the locks. So those locks that we originally know from the first building of the Erie Canal were eventually removed to accommodate another set of locks, longer, wider, and deeper. What we have down by the Erie Canal today is one set of those old 5, which is from the first enlargement, and 2 new locks which were built for the barge canal, 2 large modern locks in comparison to the old Flight of 5.
And as we did at the lowering of the lower locks, and as we'll do here on the top of the locks on this very special occasion, I would like each and every one who's over the age of 20 to salute the youth that are here. Let's give them a standing round of applause. Congratulations, you are the future. Thank you. Please be seated, and let's continue with our formal part of this meeting as I introduce to you the co-chair of the City Celebration and Events Committee, Richard Hoos. Richard, some words, please.
I'd like to thank you all for attending, reflecting on our future, a ceremony celebrating the Flight of 5 in the Erie Canal. As we reflect on the roots of yesterday, we hope to inspire today and tomorrow. We are at the heart of Niagara County. 15 miles west of here is the Great Cataract, Niagara Falls. The Creator gave us this majestic spectacle that is hailed as a wonder of the world. Here we have our own spectacle, carved from the face of the mountain, with the dreams of great men and the sweat of even greater men. It was our intention with this committee to celebrate not only the Flight of 5, we wanted to celebrate the people, the neighbors, the community of Lockport and Niagara County. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much, Rich. And this is truly a family affair, and we'd like to bring to the podium now our sister representative from the Thoreau Tourism Committee, Terry Dow, our sister city. Thank you and welcome to Lockport.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and I thank you for this kind invitation to celebrate with you here today. I bring greetings on behalf of the Mayor and Council of the City of Thorold, Ontario, Canada. I would like to begin by congratulating you on your 180th anniversary of the Erie Canal. Clinton would be proud to see the events of the day and how you are still celebrating his successes 180 years later. Last year, we celebrated the 175th anniversary of the Welland Canal. Okay, you're 4 years ahead of us, and here I thought William Hamilton Merritt was a genius when he came up with the idea of the Welland Canal. Turns out, he was only copying Governor Clinton.
Today, of course, our Canadian neighbors are like family. In 1825, though, when the Erie Canal was built, things were very different. Remember that America had fought a war with England only a few years before, and that Canada was a British colony then. Battles had been fought on both Lakes Erie and Ontario, and inland canals were then seen as matters of national security, as well as paths to economic growth. As Canada watched us completing our Erie Canal, they began feverishly building the Welland Canal to connect Lakes Erie and Ontario, and the Rideau Canal to bypass the rapids in the St. Lawrence River. Of course, the fears of military conflict were never again realized, but in the commercial competition that followed between the two countries, the Erie proved to have the competitive advantage. The loss of commerce to Canada in the years after these canals were built led to a period of economic stress for them, while America, in large part due to the Erie, prospered as never before.
Thank you very much. Also, Lockport has a lot to be happy with today with the opening of the canal, but the canal doesn't go just through the city of Lockport, it also goes through the town of Lockport.
Representing the town of Lockport, Mark Smith. Mark, would you come forward, please?
Those words that were spoken 180 years ago, the final barrier has been passed. The final barrier has been passed. What a feeling our forefathers must have had upon that day, to think that they were now elevated to one of the 7 wonders of the world at the time, comparable to the pyramids in Egypt. These people were innovators. They were ahead of their time. They created something that spanned and connected all of us across this great state. And the challenge for all of you out there today is to become the innovators for the future. Thank you all for being here, and we look for many great things in the future from the town and your great Erie Canal.
As was mentioned earlier, on October 26, 1825, the opening of the Erie Canal, Clinton's Ditch, was celebrated with a grand procession and cannon fire that echoed all the way to New York City. Today, more than 180 years later, we are gathered again at these historic locks to celebrate the rebirth of the canal system and a bright new future for the Flight of Five. Lockport is the only city in the canal corridor to have grown directly out of a construction camp by builders of the Lockport Flight of Five and Lockport Deep Cut. I just learned that the other day. During the construction of the original canal, the Niagara Escarpment presented a unique challenge to its builders, necessitating the construction of a system which could raise and lower boats 60 feet in a very short distance. The construction of these combined locks at Lockport allowed for traffic in both directions at once. It was ingenious and it was awe-inspiring. At the time, it was a feat unmatched in canal building anywhere in the world. The merchant, Ira Blossom, you might have heard, he was remarked at that time and was quoted by saying, "Unmoved as I usually am by surrounding objects, I am willing to confess that I was more astonished than I ever was by anything I had ever witnessed." Thank you again for inviting me, and once again, it's all about you guys.
Hi, good friends. Pete Wellsby. Let's invite Pete up with a rounding applause for him and hear his words today. Pete?
Thank you, Dave. Wow. I didn't expect to see so many people here today. And I have to say that this is probably the largest and the youngest crowd I've ever spoken to. So thanks for being here, everybody. Stay warm, and I bet you can't wait to get back to the classroom. In the paper this week, there have been some articles leading up to today's event, articles written by Jesse Hawley, and I've been reading those. But one in particular caught my attention, and I think that was on Monday, the one about surveying the route of the canal. If you don't know who I am, the first thing you must know is that I'm a licensed land surveyor. I love surveying. But I'm not the first surveyor who was interested in the canal. I'm told the first surveyor was James Geddes. My buddy Jim was first told about the concept of a canal in 1804. And at that time, the plan called for a canal with a uniform declination, without locks, from Lake Erie to the Hudson River. Well, guess what? They couldn't find that route. They had to pick on a route that included these incredible locks here in Lockport. And it's because of these locks that Lockport was created. It's our goal to put the locks back on the map so we can draw people from around the world and bring them back to Lockport. We're on a mission to recreate this fabulous Flight of Five that you see here in front of us. Let me give you a quick update of where we are with the project. We've tested the sediments in the locks, and we're ready to have them removed and taken to a sanitary landfill. We're about to begin a mapping project. We're hoping that in November we're going to have some really high-tech equipment around here, and we're going to create a map of this entire area. That's going to do two things for us. It'll give us the baseline to start developing the plans and specifications to move forward with the project, but it's also going to give us the baseline to start pursuing national landmark designation for the locks. I was in the mayor's office yesterday, and the mayor handed me a 4-page printout from the Legislative Gazette. It was a 4-page pullout of the amazing things that are happening here in Lockport. The second thing that happened, and Mayor, this is a confession, I was waiting to talk to the mayor, and his secretary's phone rang, and she answered it, and I eavesdropped on that conversation. It turned out that it was a phone call from a national magazine, a leisure and tourism magazine, and they posed the question, where can we get some photographs of the Flight of Five now that they're operating? If we build it, they will come. We haven't even built it yet, but I think they're coming. Thank you.
Lord God, we give you thanks for the majestic beauty of this place, of your creation, and especially for the ingenuity and creativity of those men and women that made these locks possible. For the wonder, for it all, for this moment, we give you thanks and we give you praise. Amen.
The 2005 anniversary celebration is finished now, but the plan is to be back again next year, and then again every year right up until the canal's bicentennial celebration in the year 2025. Lockport, the deep cut at Pendleton in particular, was the last section of the Erie Canal to be completed. Really, it was a good thing that they put the Lockport section off until the rest of the canal had been almost finished. as this section was so difficult that if they'd started out here, it's generally agreed today that the Erie Canal would never have been built at all. The locks at Lockport were an engineering marvel, all right, but the real obstacle here, the one that delayed the opening of the canal well into the fall of 1825, was in the countryside just south and west of town. In order for the locks to work, it was critical that the water of Lake Erie flow by gravity all the way from Buffalo to fill those locks. The otherwise completed canal had been dug from the east right up to the base of the escarpment, and was waiting just below the Flight of 5 to be supplied by that Lake Erie water from above. Now, the water level at Buffalo was high enough to do that. But there was a problem. There was a high spot in the countryside near today's Pendleton, where the bedrock rose like a giant dam, blocking any flow from Lake Erie to the locks at Lockport. Water had to flow through there. To accomplish that, workers had to chisel by hand and to blast without dynamite, which hadn't been invented yet, a channel measuring 70 feet deep for 7 miles. Of course, we know today that they did finish it, and when they were finished, since the canal itself was finished, many of the workers decided to settle down and to raise their families where they were. It's fitting that now, almost 200 years later, the community that they helped to create, that their Erie Canal created, has decided to remember them.
Years from now, will anyone look back and remember this day, the 26th of October, 1825? We cannot say, but this is a memory we here will carry for eternity. Thank you, Mayor.
The story of the Grand Erie Canal is one that grows more interesting the more it's told. Our goal is to go on telling that story through special programs like this and through our Era of the Erie series. We can use your help by letting us know your story ideas and by using and recommending our contributors. Classic Craft Woodworks Custom Cedar Watercraft, and Stephen Drew, certified in long-term care planning and serving clients in central and western New York. For copies of this or of any of our programs, or to contact us for any reason, visit our website at lowbridgeproductions.com. And thanks for watching.